The cargo ship New Horizon drifted slowly toward Kepler Station. Captain Jake Sullivan sat in his pilot's seat, watching the massive station grow larger on his screen. He did not like coming here, but he needed supplies. His ship was old and always breaking down. Kepler Station had the parts he needed at cheap prices. Jake was a simple man. He carried cargo from one planet to another. It was not exciting work, but it paid enough to keep his ship running. He had been doing this job for 5 years now, ever since he left Earth. The galaxy was big and full of strange alien races. Of them, ignored humans. They thought humans were too new to space travel to matter much. The docking bay was busy when Jake landed his ship. Alien traders walked everywhere, carrying boxes and yelling at each other in languages he did not understand. The air smelled bad, like old metal and something rotten. Jake pulled his jacket tight and walked toward the supply shops. Kepler Station was built inside a huge asteroid. The main level had shops and restaurants. The lower levels were darker and quieter. Jake had heard stories about what happened down there, but he never went to see for himself. He minded his own business and stayed out of trouble. After buying engine parts and food supplies, Jake was ready to leave. But he took a wrong turn in the station's twisting hallways. The lights got dimmer as he walked. The walls were older here, with rust stains and scratches. He could hear strange sounds echoing from somewhere ahead. Jake should have turned back. He knew he was in the wrong part of the station, but curiosity made him keep walking. Sounds got louder. He heard voices speaking in the harsh language of the Vroxian Empire. The Vroxians were tall, gray-skinned aliens who controlled many star systems. They were known for being cruel and violent. Jake reached a large open area. What he saw there made his blood freeze. Dozens of cages lined the walls. Inside the cages were people. Not humans, but other alien races. They all looked scared and hurt. Some had bandages over wounds. Others just sat quietly with empty eyes. This was a slave market. Jake had heard that such things existed, but seeing it with his own eyes was different. His hands shook as he hid behind a metal pillar. He wanted to run, but he could not move. A group of Roxians stood in the center of the room. They were conducting an auction. One of them, wearing expensive clothes, pointed at different cages. Other aliens bid on the prisoners like they were buying cattle. Jake's eyes moved from cage to cage. In one corner, he saw something that made his heart stop. A young female sat alone in a small cage. Her skin was pale blue with silver markings. Her hair was long and white. She was clearly not human, but she looked so much like his sister Lisa that it hurt to see her. The female's cage was barely big enough for her to sit up. Her wrists and ankles had metal bands around them. A strange device was attached to the back of her neck, blinking with red lights. She kept her head down, but Jake could see tears on her cheeks. She was one of the Thelians. Jake had read about them in his ship's computer. They were a peaceful race known for their healing abilities. The Vraxians had conquered their homeworld 3 years ago. Most Thalians were dead now. The survivors had been taken as slaves. The Vroxian auctioneer grabbed the female's cage and pulled it to the center of the room. He spoke in his own language, but Jake's translation device picked up some words. The Vraxian was describing her as broken and difficult to control. He said she had been punished many times for trying to escape. Jake watched as the bidding started. Several aliens raised their hands, calling out numbers. The female, whose name was Zara, according to the auctioneer, did not look up. She seemed to have given up hope completely. One bidder was louder than the others. He was a fat Varaxian, wearing gold jewelry. His name was Keth Morven, and he owned many slaves already. He liked to buy the pretty ones, especially females. Jake had heard stories about what Morven did to his slaves. None of the stories were good. Morven was winning the auction. The price kept going up, but he seemed to have unlimited money. I smiled as he bid, already planning what he would do with his new slave. Zara seemed to sense his evil intentions. She looked up for the first time, and Jake saw pure terror in her eyes. Something snapped inside Jake's mind. He thought about his sister Lisa back on Earth. He thought about how he would feel if someone tried to hurt her. He could not let this happen. Not when he could do something about it. Jake stepped out from behind the pillar. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to walk forward. He raised his hand and called out a number. It was higher than Morven's. Last bid. The whole room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at the human who had dared to enter their slave market. Now, Jake's heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. Had never been so scared in his life. Morven's face turned dark. With anger, he did not like being challenged, especially by a human. He bid again, raising the price even higher. Jake looked at his credit account on his wrist device. He was running out of money fast. The auction continued. Jake and Morven went back and forth, each trying to outbid the other. The other aliens watched with interest. Some of them seemed amused that a human was fighting with a powerful Vraxian over a slave. Jake's money was almost gone. He had spent everything he had earned from his last 3 cargo runs. If he lost this auction, he would barely have enough credits to buy fuel for his ship. But every time he looked at Zara, he knew he could not stop bidding. Finally, Morvan reached his limit. He was rich, but even he could not spend unlimited money on one slave. He made one last bid, glaring at Jake with pure hatred. Jake counted his remaining credits. He had just enough for one more bid. Jake raised his hand and called out his final number. The room went silent again. Ash. Everyone waited to see if Morven would bid higher. The fat Vraxian looked at Jake for a long moment, then turned and walked away. He was not happy, but he was done. The auctioneer seemed surprised that a human had won. He looked at Jake suspiciously, but credits were credits. He processed the sale quickly, transferring ownership of Zara to Jake Sullivan of Earth. Jake walked over to Zara's cage on shaking legs. She looked up at him with confusion and fear. She had never seen a human before. She did not know what he planned to do with her. All she knew was that she now belonged to another master. The cage door opened. With an electronic beep, Jake reached out his hand to help Zara stand up. She flinched away from his touch, expecting to be hit. Jake pulled his hand back and spoke softly. "It's okay," he said, even though he knew she could not understand him. "Not going to hurt." You, Zara, did not understand his words, but something in his voice was different from her other masters. It was gentle. She had not heard gentleness in a very long time. Slowly, carefully, Zara climbed out of her cage. She was weak from being cramped in the small space for so long. Jake wanted to help her, but he did not want to scare her more. He just walked beside her as they left the slave market. As they walked through the station toward Jake's ship, he wondered what he had just done. He had spent all his money to buy a slave. He had no idea how to take care of her. He did not even speak her language. But when he looked at her scared face, he knew he had made the right choice. Behind them, Keth Morven watched from the shadows. He would not forget this insult from a human. He would have his revenge, and he would have the Thelian female too. Jake's hands shook as he opened the door to his cargo ship. Zara followed behind him, moving slowly and carefully. She kept looking around like she expected someone to attack her. The metal bands on her wrists made soft clinking sounds as she walked. The New Horizon was not a big ship, but it was home to Jake. He had lived here for 5 years, traveling from planet to planet. The main room had a small kitchen, a table, and 2 chairs. Everything was clean and organized. Jake was not rich, but he took good care of what he had. Zara stopped just inside the door, looked at the room with wide eyes. It was the nicest place she had been in for many months. Her last masters had kept her in a dirty cell with no windows. Before that, she had lived in worse places. Jake did not know what to do next. He had bought a slave, but he had never owned another person before. The idea made him feel sick. He looked at Zara standing by the door. She was waiting for him to tell her what to do. "Sit down," Jake said, pointing to one of the chairs. His voice was gentle, but Zara still jumped at the sound. She moved to the chair and sat down carefully. She kept her eyes on the floor and her hands in her lap. Jake sat in the other chair. He wanted to talk to her, but they did not speak. The same language? Tried speaking slowly in English, but Zara just looked confused and scared. "Computer," Jake said to the air. "Turn on the translation system." A female voice came from the ship's speakers. "Translation system active, Captain Sullivan." I am Lily, your ship's artificial intelligence. I can help you communicate with our guest. Zara's head snapped up when she heard the computer voice. On her homeworld, the Thalians had used simple computers, but nothing like this. She looked around the room, trying to find where the voice was coming from. Don't be afraid, Jake said. Lily is just a computer program. She helps me run the ship. Lily, can you translate what I'm saying into Thalian? I have basic Thalian language patterns in my memory, Lily replied. I will do my best to translate for you. Lily's voice changed to a softer tone and began speaking in Zara's language. The words were not perfect, but Zara could understand them. Jake was telling her not to be afraid. He was saying that she was safe now. Zara looked at Jake with surprise. No master had ever told her she was safe before. She did not know if she should believe him. Maybe this was a trick to make her trust him before he hurt her. Jake could see the doubt in her eyes. He understood why she would not trust him. After everything she had been through, trusting anyone would be hard. Tell her my name is Jake, he said to Lily. Ask her what her name is. Lily translated the words. Zara hesitated for a moment, then spoke quietly in her own language. She says her name is Zara, Lily told Jake. Was a healer on her homeworld before the war. Jake felt his heart break a little. This young woman had been a healer, someone who helped others. Now she was a slave, broken and scared. He wanted to help her, but he did not know how. Tell her I'm sorry for what happened to her people, Jake said. Tell her I want to help her. Lily translated his words. Zara looked at Jake with confusion. She did not understand why he would want to help her. Masters did not help slaves. They used them and threw them away when they were broken. Jake stood up slowly, making sure not to scare Zara. He walked to a cabinet and pulled out some clothes. They were his spare work clothes, but they were clean and whole. He brought them to Zara. These are for you, he said through Lily's translation. You can change your clothes if you want to. Zara looked at the clothes with wonder. They were simple, work clothes, but they were better than the dirty rags she was wearing. She had not had clean clothes in months. She took them carefully, like they might disappear if she was not gentle. Jake pointed to a door on the side of the room. That's the bathroom, he said. You can wash and change in there. Take as much time as you need. Zara did not understand why Jake was being kind to her. She waited for him to tell her what he wanted in return. But Jake just smiled and went back to his chair. He picked up a book and started reading, giving her privacy. Zara walked to the bathroom door slowly. She looked back at Jake, but he was not watching her. She opened the door and stepped inside. The bathroom was small, but clean. There was a shower, a sink, and a mirror. Zara had not seen herself in a mirror for a long time. When she looked at her reflection, she wanted to cry. Her face was thin and pale. Her hair was dirty and tangled. She looked like a ghost of the person she used to be. Zara took off her old clothes and stepped into the shower. The warm water felt wonderful on her skin. She had not had a warm shower since before the war. She washed her hair and scrubbed her skin until it was clean. When she put on the new clothes, they were too big for her, but they were soft and warm. Looked at herself in the mirror again. She looked a little more like a person and less like a broken slave. Jake was still reading when she came out of the bathroom. He looked up and smiled at her. You look better, he said through Lily's translation. Are you hungry? Zara nodded. She had not eaten a real meal in days. Her last masters had given her just enough food to keep her alive. Jake went to the kitchen and started cooking. He made simple food, but it smelled good. While Jake cooked, Zara looked around the room. Saw pictures on the walls? Most of them showed Jake with other humans. In one picture, he was with a young woman who looked like him. They were both smiling and happy. That's my sister Lisa, Jake said when he saw Zara looking at the picture. She lives on Earth with her family. I miss her a lot. Zara did not understand all the words, but she could see love in Jake's eyes when he talked about his sister. She had once had a family, too. Her parents and her brother had all died when the Varaxians attacked her homeworld. She was alone now. Jake brought her a plate of food. It was just simple meat and vegetables, but it tasted better than anything she had eaten in months. She ate slowly, making sure to chew each bite carefully. Her stomach was not used to real food anymore. Tell me about the thing on your neck, Jake said when she finished eating. He pointed to the device attached to the back of her neck. The red lights were still blinking. Zara's hand went to the device automatically. Through Lily's translation, she explained what it was. It was a neural inhibitor designed to block her natural telepathic abilities. All Thalians could read thoughts and emotions, but the device stopped her from using this gift. Does it hurt? Jake asked. Zara nodded. The device caused constant pain, like a headache that never went away. It also made her feel weak and sick. She had been wearing it for so long that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to be normal. Jake's face grew. Angry when he heard this. Not angry at Zara, but angry at the people who had hurt her. He stood up and walked to his computer terminal. Computer, look up information about Thelian neural inhibitors, he said. How do you remove them safely? The computer searched for several minutes. Finally, Lily spoke. Captain, neural inhibitors are very dangerous devices. They must be removed by someone with medical training. Removed incorrectly, they can cause permanent brain damage or death. Jake's heart sank. He wanted to help Zara, but he did not know enough about alien medicine to remove the device safely. He looked at Zara, who was watching him with curious eyes. I know someone who might be able to help, Jake said slowly. Dr. Lisa Park works at New Singapore Station. She studies alien biology. She might know how to remove the device safely. Zara did not understand all his words, but she could see that Jake was trying to help her. She had never met anyone like him before. All her masters had been cruel or indifferent. Jake seemed to actually care about her pain. Tell her we're going. To New Singapore Station, Jake said to Lily. Tell her I'm going to try to help her get better. Lily translated the words. Zara looked at Jake with something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. She did not know if Jake could really help her. But for the first time in months, she believed that someone might actually try. Jake prepared his ship for departure. Showed Zara to a small room with a bed. This is your room, he said. You can rest here. No one will bother you. Zara had not had her own room since before the war. She touched the bed softly. It had clean sheets and a pillow. It was the most comfortable place she had been in for a very long time. As the ship left Kepler Station, Zara lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. She was still scared and in pain, but something had changed. For the first time since her capture, she was not alone. Someone was trying to help her. Jake sat in the pilot's seat, setting course for New Singapore Station. He did not know if Dr. Park could help Zara, but he had to try. It saved her from the slave market, but that was just the beginning. He had to help her become whole again. The journey would take 3 days. Jake hoped that would be enough. Time for Zara to start trusting him. He also hoped that Dr. Park would be able to remove the neural inhibitor safely. If not, Zara would slowly die from the device's effects. Jake looked at the stars ahead of his ship. He had changed his life completely in just 1 day. He was no longer just a cargo hauler. Now he was responsible for another person's life. It was scary, but it also felt right. Behind him, the door to Zara's room was closed. For the first time in months, she was sleeping peacefully. She was still a slave legally, but Jake had already decided that would change. He just had to figure out how to make it happen. New Singapore Station was much different from Kepler Station. It was clean and bright, with wide hallways and friendly people. Jake had been here many times before to visit his friend, Dr. Lisa Park. She worked in the medical research section. Studying different alien species and their biology, the 3-day journey had been good for both. Jake and Zara. She was eating better now and looked healthier. Her skin had more color, and her eyes were not as empty as before. She had also learned some basic English words. While Jake had picked up a few Thelian phrases with Lily's help, Zara still flinched when Jake moved too quickly. But she was starting to trust him. She could see that he was different from her other masters. He never raised his voice or threatened her. He always asked permission before coming into her room. Most importantly, he had never tried to hurt her. Dr. Lisa Park was waiting for them at the docking bay. She was a small woman with dark hair and kind eyes. She had been Jake's friend since they were both students on Earth. When Jake called her about Zara's condition, she had immediately agreed to help. Jake, it's good to see you, Dr. Park said as they walked toward her laboratory. She looked at Zara with professional interest, but also with sympathy. You must be Zara. Jake told me about your situation. Zara stayed close to Jake as they walked through the station. There were many different alien species here, but they all seemed peaceful. No one looked at her like she was property. It was a strange feeling for someone who had been a slave for so long. Dr. Park's laboratory was filled with medical equipment and computers. She had been studying alien biology for 10 years and knew more about different species than almost anyone else in this part of the galaxy. Let me examine the neural inhibitor, Dr. Park said through Lily's translation. Zara sat on an examination table while Dr. Park used a special scanner to look at the device on her neck. Jake watched nervously as Dr. Park studied the readings on her computer. Her face was serious, and she made notes on her tablet. After minutes, she turned to face them. The device is worse than I thought, Dr. Park said. It's not just blocking her telepathic abilities, it's slowly destroying the neural pathways in her brain. If we don't remove it soon, the damage will be permanent. Felt his stomach drop. How soon is soon? Maybe 2 weeks, Dr. Park replied. After that, even if we remove the device, her abilities will never come back. She might also suffer from memory loss and other brain problems. Zara understood enough of the conversation to know it was about her. Through Lily's translation, she learned that the device was killing her slowly. She had suspected this for months, but hearing it confirmed made her feel cold inside. Can you remove it safely? Jake asked. Dr. Park was quiet for a moment. I can try. I've never done this exact procedure before, but I've studied Thelian brain anatomy. Surgery is very dangerous. There's a 30% chance she could die during the operation. Jake looked at Zara. It's your choice, he said through Lily. We can try the surgery, or we can look for another doctor who might know more. Zara thought about her options. She could keep the device and die slowly over the next few weeks. Could risk the surgery and maybe die quickly. Or she could spend more time looking for help while the device continued to damage her brain. I want the surgery, she said in her halting English. Better to die trying than die doing nothing. Jake was proud of her courage. After everything she had been through, she was still willing to fight for her life. He squeezed her hand gently. Dr. Park, when can you do the operation? Tomorrow morning, Dr. Park replied. I need tonight to prepare and study the procedure more carefully. Zara should rest and eat well tonight. She'll need all her strength. That evening, Jake and Zara sat in the guest quarters that Dr. Park had arranged for them. Jake had ordered food from the station's restaurant, and they ate together quietly. Zara was nervous about the surgery, but she tried not to show it. Tell me about your homeworld, Jake said through Lily. What was it like before the war? Zara's eyes grew sad, but she began to speak. Through Lily's translation, she told Jake about Thelios, her home planet. It had been a beautiful world with purple skies and silver oceans. How the Thelian people lived in harmony with nature and with each other. We were healers, Zara explained. When other species had conflicts, they would ask us to help solve them. We could feel their emotions and understand their pain. This made us good at bringing peace. Jake listened as Zara described her life before the war. She had worked in a healing center, helping people with both physical and emotional injuries. She had been studying to become a master healer, which was a great honor among her people. I had a family, Zara continued. My parents, my younger brother, and my grandmother. We lived in a house near the healing center. Every evening we would sit together and share our thoughts telepathically. It was like being connected to each other's souls. Jake felt his eyes water as he listened. Zara had lost everything. Her family, her home, her purpose in life, and even her natural abilities. But somehow, she had not given up hope completely. The Viraxians came without warning, Zara said. They destroyed our cities from space before we could defend ourselves. Most of my people died in the first attack. The survivors were captured and sold as slaves. Jake reached across the table and took her hand. I'm sorry, he said. No one should have to go through what you've experienced. Zara looked at their joined hands. Jake's skin was warm and rough from years of manual work, Her skin was smooth and pale blue. They were different species from different worlds, but she felt a connection to him that she had not felt with anyone since her family died. "Why did you save me?" she asked. "You spent all your money and put yourself in danger. I don't understand." Jake was quiet for a moment. "You reminded me of my sister," he said finally. "But that's not the only reason. What I saw at that slave market was wrong. I couldn't just walk away and pretend I didn't see it." Zara studied his face. Through her damaged telepathic abilities, she could sense his emotions faintly. She felt his sincerity and his genuine care for her. It was something she had not experienced from anyone except her family. "On my world, we believe that helping others is the highest calling," Zara said. "You have the soul of a healer, Jake Sullivan, even if you are not Thelian." The next morning, Dr. Park prepared for the surgery. She had spent all night studying Thelian anatomy and planning the procedure. The neural inhibitor was attached to Zara's brainstem with tiny wires. Removing it would require very precise work. Jake waited in the surgery room's viewing area. He could see Zara lying on the operating table, connected to various machines. Dr. Park and her assistant worked carefully, using microscopic tools to disconnect the device from Zara's nervous system. The surgery took 4 hours. Jake paced back and forth, checking the time every few minutes. He had never been so nervous in his life. If something went wrong, he would lose the person he had risked everything to save. Finally, Dr. Park emerged from the operating room. She looked tired but relieved. "The surgery was successful," she said. "We removed the device without damaging her brain, but we won't know if her abilities will return until she wakes up." Zara slept for 18 hours after the surgery. When she finally opened her eyes, Jake was sitting beside her bed. She looked at him and smiled weakly. "How do you feel?" Jake asked. Zara touched the back of her neck. The neural inhibitor was gone. For the first time in months, she did not have a constant headache. But she also could not sense Jake's emotions like she had before. "The pain is gone," she said in English. Her language skills had improved during their time together. I cannot feel your thoughts anymore." Dr. Park came into the room with her tablet. "The neural pathways in your brain were damaged by the device," she explained. "They might heal over time, but it could take weeks or months. Some of your abilities might never come back." Zara nodded. She had expected this. The important thing was that she was alive and free from the device's constant torture. Over the next few days, something amazing happened. Zara's abilities began to return slowly. First, she could sense strong emotions from people nearby. Then she could pick up thoughts if someone was thinking very loudly. Each day, her powers grew a little stronger. Dr. Park was fascinated by Zara's recovery. She had never seen neural pathways heal so quickly. "Thelian brains are remarkable," she told Jake. "They can repair damage that would be permanent in most other species." Jake was happy to see Zara getting better, but he was also worried about the future. Legally, Zara was still his slave, needed to find a way to give her freedom officially. He also needed to decide what to do next with his life. One evening, as they sat together in the station's observation deck, looking at the stars, Zara made a discovery that would change everything. "Jake," she said suddenly, "there's something strange about your mind." Jake looked at her with concern. "Strange how?" Zara concentrated, using her returning abilities to examine Jake's thoughts more carefully. What she found amazed her. "Your mind is different from other species," she said. "It has natural barriers that I cannot penetrate. Even with my full abilities, I could only sense your surface emotions. I cannot read your deeper thoughts or control your mind in any way." Did not understand why this was important. Is that bad? Word traveled fast through the hidden networks of escaped slaves and freedom fighters. The story of a human who bought a slave and helped her heal was too unusual to ignore. Within 2 weeks of leaving New Singapore Station, Jake and Zara found themselves at the center of something much bigger than they had expected. Their first visitor came while they were stopped at a small trading post for supplies. Jake was loading food into his ship when a tall, thin alien approached him. The creature had green skin and 4 arms, marking him as a Kelton. Name was Vex, and he had escaped from a Vroxian mining colony 6 months ago. But you're Jake Sullivan, Vex said in broken English. The human who saved the Thelian healer. Jake looked around nervously. He did not like being recognized. Maybe. Who wants to know? Vex smiled, showing pointed teeth. My people have heard of you. We know what you did for Zara. We need your help too. Jake invited Vex onto his ship. Zara was in the main room, practicing her telepathic abilities by reading the emotions of people in the nearby market. Her powers were much stronger now, though still not at full strength. When Zara saw Vex, her face filled with sadness. She could sense the pain and trauma that all escaped slaves carried with them. He has been hurt badly, she told Jake. His mind is full of scars. Through Lily's translation system, Vex told them his story. He had been captured during a Varaxian raid on his homeworld. For 3 years, he worked in the terrible conditions of a mining colony. Many slaves died from overwork and disease. Vex only escaped when a cave-in created confusion among the guards. There are still 200 slaves in that mine, Vex said. Keltons, Thelians, and others. They are dying slowly. The Varaxians work them until they drop, then replace them with new captures. Jake felt sick hearing about the conditions in the mine. What do you want me to do about it? Help us plan a rescue, Vex replied. You are immune to Varaxian mental control. With your help we could free them. Jake had been afraid of this moment. Ever since Zara discovered his immunity to psychic control, he knew that people would ask him to help with dangerous missions. He was not a soldier or a hero. He was just a cargo hauler who had made one good decision. I don't know anything about rescue operations, Jake said. I wouldn't know where to start. Zara placed her hand on Jake's arm. You saved me when you didn't know what you were doing, she said. Sometimes the heart knows what the mind cannot figure out. 3 days later, another visitor arrived. This time, it was a human. Commander Alex Torres had been looking for Jake ever since word of his actions reached the underground networks. Alex was a former military officer from Earth who had been fighting the slave trade for 2 years. Alex was a tough-looking man with short gray hair and serious eyes. I had served in Earth's Space Navy before leaving to fight slavery on his own. When he learned about Jake's immunity to psychic control, he knew he had found something important. The Earth government knows about the slavery problem, Alex told Jake as they sat in the ship's main room. But they call it an internal alien affair. They refuse to get involved officially. Jake was not surprised. Earth was still new to galactic politics. The human government did not want to make enemies of powerful alien empires over what they saw as other people's problems. So you're fighting this war alone? Jake asked. Alex shook his head. Not alone. There's an underground network of escaped slaves and sympathizers. We call ourselves the Liberation Front. We've been running small rescue operations for months, but we're limited in what we can do. Alex explained that most rescue attempts failed because the Varaxians could control the minds of the rescuers. They would turn escaped slaves against each other or make them walk back into captivity willingly. But humans were immune to these techniques. With humans leading rescue operations, we could save thousands of slaves, Alex said. But we need more humans willing to help. Jake looked at Zara, who was listening to every word. Her telepathic abilities allowed her to sense Alex's true intentions. She nodded at Jake, confirming that Alex was telling the truth. What would you need me to do? Jake asked. Alex smiled. First, we need to test your immunity properly. Then we need to start planning real rescue operations. Are you willing to try? God. Jake thought about all the slaves like Zara who were suffering in Vracian camps. He thought about Vex and the 200 people dying in the mine. They had already changed his life by saving one person. Maybe it was time to try saving more. Okay, Jake said. I'll help. The test of Jake's immunity took place on a remote asteroid where the Liberation Front had a hidden base. The base was small but well-equipped, with medical facilities and communication equipment. About 50 escaped slaves lived here, working together to plan rescue operations. The person testing Jake's immunity was a Vraxian defector named Kala. She had once been a psychic controller for the Empire, but had turned against her own people when she saw the horrors of the slave trade. She was one of the few Varaxians who opposed slavery. "I will try different types of mental control on you, Kala," explained through a translator. "If you are truly immune, you should feel nothing at all." Jake sat in a chair facing Kala. She placed her hands near his head and began to concentrate. Her eyes glowed with a purple light as she tried to enter his mind. For an hour, Kala tried every technique she knew. She attempted to read his thoughts, control his actions, and implant false memories. Jake felt nothing except a slight tingling sensation. "Remarkable," Kala said when the test was finished. "Your mind is completely closed to psychic intrusion. I have never seen anything like it." Alex was excited by the results. "This confirms what we suspected. Humans have a natural defense against Varaxian mental control. With enough human volunteers, we could change the entire balance of this conflict." Liberation Front's first real rescue operation targeted the mining colony where Vex had been imprisoned. The plan was complex, but simple in its basic idea. Jake and 2 other human volunteers would lead a team of escaped slaves to the colony. While the humans resisted any mental control attempts, the freed slaves would help evacuate the prisoners. Zara insisted on coming with them. Her telepathic abilities had grown stronger every day, and she could now sense other Thelians across great distances. She had located 17 of her people in the mining colony and refused to abandon them. "It's too dangerous," Jake argued. "What if something goes wrong?" Zara smiled at him.
Ow.
"You risked everything to save me. Now, I want to risk everything to save others. We are partners in this, Jake Sullivan." Jake could not argue with her logic. They had become partners in every sense of the word. Over the past months, their relationship had grown from master and slave to something much deeper. They trusted each other completely and worked together like they shared the same mind. The rescue team consisted of 8 people: Jake, Zara, Alex, Vex, 2 other humans named Pete and Sarah, and 2 more escaped slaves. They traveled in Jake's ship and 2 smaller vessels borrowed from the Liberation Front. The mining colony was located on a barren planet with no atmosphere. The slaves worked in underground tunnels, digging for rare metals that the Varaxians used in their weapons. The conditions were horrible: poisonous gases and unstable rock formations. The rescue operation began at night, when most of the guards were sleeping. Jake and the other humans infiltrated the guard posts, while the escaped slaves moved toward the mining tunnels. Everything went according to plan until the alarm sounded. The Varaxian guards tried to use their mental control powers to stop the rescue, but they could not affect the humans. Jake fought his way through the main security station while Alex and Pete secured the landing pad. The escaped slaves worked quickly to free their fellow prisoners. Zara used her telepathic abilities to coordinate the evacuation. She could sense the location of every slave in the complex and guide the rescue teams to them. Her powers also allowed her to communicate with slaves who spoke different languages. The rescue was a complete success. They freed all 200 slaves from the mining colony, including the 17 Thelians that Zara had sensed. The Varaxian guards were so confused by their inability to control the humans that they could not organize an effective response. As Jake's ship lifted off from the planet with its cargo of freed slaves, he felt a sense of pride and purpose that he had never experienced before. They had actually done it. They had saved 200 people from slavery and suffering, but their victory came with a price. News of the rescue spread quickly through Varaxian space. The Empire was furious that someone had successfully attacked one of their facilities. They began hunting for the humans responsible, offering large rewards for their capture. The person most interested in catching Jake was Keth Morven, the fat Varaxian, who had tried to buy Zara at the slave auction. Morven had never forgotten the insult of being outbid by a human. Now that same human was leading successful attacks against Varaxian interests. Morven assembled a fleet of warships and began searching for Jake's ship. He also put bounties on the heads of all known human rebels. A hunt for Jake Sullivan and his Liberation Front had begun. But Jake was no longer the simple cargo hauler who had stumbled into a slave market. He had found his purpose in life, and he was not going to back down. 6 months had passed since Jake first saved Zara from the slave market. In that time, everything had changed. The Liberation Front had grown from a small group of escaped slaves into a real resistance movement. They had rescued over 800 people from Varaxian camps and established 3 hidden bases in the asteroid fields. Jake stood on the bridge of the captured Varaxian transport ship that now served as their flagship. The ship had been renamed Freedom's Call and served as the mobile headquarters for their operations. Around him, freed slaves from a dozen different species worked together. Planning their next rescue mission, Zara's telepathic abilities had returned to full strength. She could now communicate with other Thelians across vast distances of space, creating a network of information that the Varaxians could not detect or stop. Through this network, they had located dozens of slave camps and learned about Varaxian military movements. "We have a problem," Alex Torres said as he entered the bridge. His face was grim as he handed Jake a datapad. "Our spy network reports that Keth Morven is assembling a massive fleet. He's convinced the Varaxian High Command to let him hunt us down personally." Jake looked at the intelligence report. Morven had 20 warships under his command and was heading toward the Epsilon sector, where the Liberation Front had their main base. The fat Varaxian had never forgotten his humiliation at the slave auction and wanted revenge. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. 3 days, Alex replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines hard." Zara placed her hand on Jake's shoulder. Over the months, they had become true partners in every way. Their relationship had grown from friendship to something deeper, bound together by shared purpose and genuine love. "The base cannot be evacuated in time," Zara said. "Too many people, not enough ships? We will have to fight." Jake nodded grimly. He had hoped to avoid a direct military confrontation with the Varaxians, but Morven was forcing their hand. The Liberation Front had rescued hundreds of people, but they were not a real army. Most of their fighters were escaped slaves with little military training. "We need to level the playing field," Jake said. "Lily, contact all our cells. Tell them to converge on the Epsilon base. We're going to make our stand there." Over the next 2 days, ships began arriving at the hidden asteroid base. Captured Varaxian vessels, converted cargo haulers, and even some sympathetic alien traders who supported their cause. By the time Morven's fleet arrived, the Liberation Front had assembled 40 ships of various sizes. It was still not enough to match 20 Varaxian warships in direct combat, but Jake had a plan that did not rely on firepower alone. The battle began when Morven's scouts detected the Liberation Front's ships hiding among the asteroids. The Varaxian commander immediately ordered an attack, confident that his superior numbers and firepower would crush the rebels quickly. "All ships, this is Jake Sullivan." Jake broadcast on an open channel. "Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every slave who still suffers under Varaxian rule. Today we show the galaxy that freedom is stronger than tyranny." The Liberation Front ships spread out among the asteroids, rosing the rocky cover to avoid the worst of the Varaxian weapons. Jake's strategy was simple but effective. Instead of fighting ship to ship, they would use hit-and-run tactics. Striking fast and then disappearing into the asteroid field, Zara stood at the center of the Freedom's Call bridge, her eyes closed. In concentration, she was using her telepathic abilities to link the minds of willing volunteers across the entire fleet. This created an unprecedented level of coordination between ships, allowing them to move like a single organism. Enemy battleship. Approaching from Sector 7, Zara announced without opening her eyes. 3 of our fighters are moving to intercept." Jake watched as the battle unfolded on his tactical display. The Liberation Front ships moved with impossible precision, always knowing where their allies were and what they were doing. The Varaxians had never faced anything like this coordinated telepathic network. Morven's flagship, a massive dreadnought called Iron Fist, pushed deeper into the asteroid field. The fat Varaxian was determined to capture Jake personally and make him pay for his humiliation. "Target that transport ship," Morven ordered his gunners. "That's where the human leader is hiding." But as the Iron Fist closed in on the Freedoms, Jake sprang his trap. 6 Liberation Front ships emerged from hiding spots behind large asteroids, surrounding the Varaxian dreadnought. Led by Alex Torres, In a captured corvette, they began attacking the larger ship's weak points. The Iron Fist was powerful, but it could not defend against attacks from all directions. The Liberation Front ships were smaller and faster. Darting in to strike before the Dreadnought's heavy guns could target them, Jake piloted the Freedom's Call directly toward Morven's ship. It was a dangerous move, but he wanted to face the Varaxian commander personally. The two ships locked together as boarding parties from both sides prepared for hand-to-hand combat. Jake led his team through the connecting airlocks and into the Iron Fist corridors. The Varaxian soldiers tried to use their mental control powers on the boarding party, but the humans were immune and the freed slaves fought with the fury of people who had nothing left to lose. The battle inside the ship was fierce but brief. Jake's team fought their way to the bridge where Morven was waiting with his personal guards. The fat Varaxian sneered when he saw Jake approaching. "Finally, we meet face to face," Morven said in heavily accented English. "You have caused me much trouble, human." "Good," Jake replied. "Hope it was worth it." Morven activated a personal psychic amplifier, a device that boosted his mental control powers. Purple energy surrounded his head as he tried to force Jake to kneel before him. In the past, this technique had broken the will of countless slaves and enemies, but Jake felt nothing except a slight tingling sensation. His human mind remained completely free from Varaxian control. He walked forward calmly, while Morven stared in disbelief. "Impossible," Morven whispered.
One way, my way, no one where one way, my way, Jake reached the Varaxian commander and knocked him unconscious with a single punch. Around the bridge, Morven's guards surrendered when they realized their weapons were useless. Against opponents they could not control, with their flagship captured and their commander defeated, the rest of Morven's fleet began to retreat. The Liberation Front had won their first major military victory against the Varaxian Empire, but the real victory came from what they found in Morven's personal files. The fat Varaxian had been keeping detailed records of every slave operation in this sector of space. The data included locations of camps, transport schedules, and the identities of high-ranking officials involved in the slave trade. "This information is worth more than 10 military victories," Alex said as he reviewed the files. "We can use it to coordinate simultaneous strikes across multiple systems." Jake looked at the captured data with satisfaction. They had enough information to cripple the Varaxian slave trade in this entire region. But more importantly, they had proven that the Empire could be defeated. 3 weeks later, Jake stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Harmony Station. Representatives from dozens of species sat in the Great Assembly Hall, listening as he presented evidence of Varaxian crimes against sentient beings. Zara stood beside him, serving as the official representative of all enslaved peoples. Her telepathic/QR abilities allowed her to sense the emotions of the assembled delegates, and she could feel their shock and outrage as Jake revealed the full scope of the slave trade. "The Varaxian Empire has enslaved over 2 million sentient beings," Jake told the council. "They have destroyed entire civilizations and scattered their peoples across the galaxy. This is not an internal alien affair. This is genocide." Ambassador to the Galactic Council, a woman named Ambassador Helen Price, stood to address the assembly. "The Earth government can no longer ignore this humanitarian crisis. We formally request that the Council take action against the Varaxian slave trade." One by one, Other delegates began to speak. The Kelton representative talked about the mining colonies where his people were worked to death. The Saurian ambassador described how Vraxian raiders had depopulated entire star systems. Even some former Vraxian allies began to distance themselves from the Empire's practices. The council vote was not even close. By a margin of 43-7, they condemned the Vraxian slave trade and authorized military action to stop it. A coalition of species, led by Earth's growing space fleet, would work together to liberate the remaining slave camps. Jake's immunity to psychic control had become the template for training programs across the galaxy. Scientists studied human brain patterns and developed techniques to help other species resist mental domination. For the first time in generations, the Vraxian Empire faced enemies they could not break with their minds. The final scene took place 1 year later on a world called New Hope. It had once been a Vraxian slave processing center, but now it was home to thousands of freed slaves who were building new lives together. Jake and Zara walked through the bustling town that had grown up around the former prison camp. Children of multiple species played together in the streets, their laughter echoing off the buildings